Good evening, everyone. You're watching another 15 Minutes with Marcus King. I'm here with Neli Vazquez. She runs the #1 nonprofit in the nation. It's Safe Haven. She's a champion against recidivism, and she does a lot to just collectively help people in the community. She is a wonderful person. And Neli, could you please tell us what you all do again?
Well, thank you, Marcus, for having me on your show. I'm so excited to have you here and tell you about what we're doing here at A Safe Haven. Since 1994, A Safe Haven has really thought holistically about how we can help people that are in crisis. Many people we noticed back in the early 90s were dealing with substance abuse issues, and unfortunately were ending up in a criminal justice system. What people didn't realize was that we had this war on drugs, and that the vast majority of the resources, actually about 97 cents of every dollar from the war on drugs, was actually going into the criminal justice system and what I call supply reduction methods. And what that meant was that people that were dealing with these issues were actually ending up in a path that would ultimately take them to prison. And for us, as having been through this type of situation and suffering from this type of disease in our own family, we knew that it was a disease, and we knew that it had to have a path that fell under the umbrella of behavioral health care. But nobody else was thinking about it in terms of how do we help people not only deal with their addiction issues or substance abuse issues, but how do we also help them deal with the other complex issues that you're dealing with, such as unemployment, such as unstable housing, and what about the children?
Right.
So today, A Safe Haven is truly a one-stop shop, and we really were on the cutting edge and this, at the tip of the spear of thinking about how do we bring together all of these services under one roof in a way that was going to prevent people from entering the criminal justice system, that was going to divert them, if they did, have a place for a judge to refer them to in lieu of holding them in jail. And then finally, from a reentry perspective, as people were coming out of the prison system that were in there due to these types of reasons in the first place, have a place that can provide a step down and a transitional soft landing so that we can bring them in, assess them, and get them the wraparound services so that we can get them back on their feet, because we both know that if someone had a criminal justice record, it was almost impossible for them to get a job. Right. It was impossible for them to get housing. There's a lot of restrictions against that. And believe it or not, it was even impossible for them to get into a food pantry line, right, in many cases. So what were these people supposed to do?
Right.
And today, we all know the data is out that there's a extremely high rate of recidivism in the system. In fact, on the federal level, it's as high as 70%. So we know that by reducing the rate of recidivism and preventing people from going into the system and getting them back on their feet is a tremendous, return on investment and a huge impact on society. But because there was nobody at this time thinking about these things, we were kind of going out there solo and building this model. And we're really grateful that today, 25 years later, we've now had the declaration of the national opiate epidemic. We've now had a criminal justice reform bill passed. And we are ready to continue to build on a solid foundation that knows what to do with this population in a way that gives them, again, the ability to get their dignity back, get them back on their feet with jobs and housing in a sustainable manner. And we've been doing it for 25 years. This is our 25-year anniversary.
Wow.
And we've done it for over 120,000 people since we started.
Can you tell me a story? And you don't have to mention any names, but in the amount of time that you've been doing this type of work, helping people, changing lives, making Illinois a better place, what is one of the stories that stands out the most in regards to people that you have helped?
We've got an incredible, number of stories, but one that I'll mention that stands out is related to the criminal justice system. Bianca. So Bianca actually wrote a book called In Deep recently.
What's Bianca's last name for the people who don't know?
Angelia Bianca. Bianca's actually her last name.
Okay.
Yeah, but she goes by Bianca. In any case, she's a horrific story of someone that got addicted to opiates, started out with pain pills since she was like 9 years old. By the time she was a teenager, she was in the throes of addiction, had become a heroin addict, and for the next 36 years, she literally lived on the streets and had been estranged from her family for like over 20 years. She had about 4 children during the entire time that she was homeless. Believe it or not, she was arrested over 120 times. She served 7 different bits in prison. And finally, the last time that she came out of prison, she got, out, and she went and stayed with a friend and, started sleeping on the couch, and knew that that was not the environment that she wanted in her life anymore. She knew she was about to use. And it is what people do when they come out of the prison system. If they're, someone that suffers from the disease of substance abuse disorders, the first thing they do is they want to go back and use, unfortunately. And she was no different. So when she realized that it was, going to be this path again of going through, the addiction process again in the hell that she didn't want to go back to, she begged a judge to get her referred to a safe haven. She tried on her own. Unfortunately, we're always full. Right. So with the recommendation of the judge, we're able to make accommodations for her. And she actually lived here for about 8 months. We provided 3 healthy meals a day, full, case management, wraparound services, got her into volunteering. We actually helped her land her first job, ended up getting her an apartment, and she actually arrived in August of 2011 and left in March of 2012, and she's never looked back since. I mean, today she owns a 4-bedroom home. She's been reunited with all of her children. They're all in her life. Her entire family's back in her life, and she's traveled the world and speaks today about her journey. And we're really proud of her because, she's not done. She's written a book, and it's called In Deep, and we really, are really proud of her. And she's a great example of someone who had been really at the deepest, worst case scenario in the throes of addiction, and was able to make a major comeback. And I believe that, the vast majority of the people that do come to A Safe Haven, once we help them solve, that issue, at the root level, the sky's the limit in terms of what they can do. So we've got lots of examples of people that have gone on to start their own businesses, raise their families. I was actually on the Steve Harvey show a few years ago with the husband and wife team, which both met here at A Safe Haven when they went through their journey and decided to, we got them jobs and got them into apartments. And, fast forward, this was back in 1998 and 1999 that they came through A Safe Haven. And they've gone on and started their own business. They have a beautiful set of twins who presented me with a $10,000 check on the Steve Harvey show, as a show of gratitude. And the stories go on and on and on, and every single one of them is extremely inspiring and very rewarding. And I think that what we need to do is we need to be able to have the type of resources from both the public and the private resources that can really unleash what's possible in terms of what we can do. Today we house about 5,000 people a year. And we're not even touching the tip of the iceberg of what we can do if the resources were available and dedicated, to really think about solving the issue versus Band-Aids.
Okay. Well, when people, actually look at this, I really hope that this helps you drum up more support. Looks like you have a lot of support, but people are definitely behind you. So I like so many things regarding what you do. I like how you help returning citizens, people on parole and probation, women from different socioeconomically disenfranchised backgrounds. I love everything that you do. But coming from a correctional background, one of the things that I really like, because a lot of people should not have ended up in a correctional facility anyway, but life kind of spiraled out of control and things just happen. But there's such a focus nationwide right now on reentry, and we need to focus on that because it's a huge problem. And there are many people doing good jobs. But one thing that makes you unique, and I really appreciate you, especially when I came in, I saw this beautiful little girl downstairs. She's about 2. The way you help families. There's such a focus on reentry, but we need to talk about no entry as well. And that talks about rate, and that's basically the philosophy that you raise children up to be productive citizens, and you help them with their primary as well as secondary socialization. So the children, how big of a role is that for you?
Oh, it's a big, big deal. As we were talking about the criminal justice system, we know that about 70% of the women in the Department of Corrections are mothers.
Wow.
And they're separated from their children as they're doing their time. And those children are either in the foster care system, the DCFS system, or they're staying with their relative. So what we do is when the women from the Department of Corrections get referred to a safe haven as, a transitional program for them to give them a soft landing back into society, we're able to provide them all the assessments and the wraparound services that they need to help them get back on their feet. And because we also work with the Department of Children and Family Services, we're able to make accommodations to reunite that mother with her children under our care. So not only does the mother get the psychological services and the employment and the educational services that she needs to ultimately get back on her feet in a way that's going to allow her to support herself and her children, we also provide wraparound services for the children while they're here as well. So the whole family is healing together.
Wow.
And what's awesome is we do make sure that the children get plugged into the local school system. So that gives us the opportunity to give that mother hands-on parenting skills so that they are part of their child's education, and they're getting up in the morning, they're getting their children ready for school, they're taking them down for a healthy breakfast, they're walking them to school, and they're becoming allies for that school system and that teacher. So no longer is that teacher dealing with a child that's coming to school hungry, that's coming home, God knows, from what kind of circumstances of dysfunction, that's happening in the home. We know for a fact that these kids are, coming to school ready to learn, their homework's done, and that mother or that father or both are actually engaged in a very healthy way with the school system. So the proof is out. So we've been doing this now for 25 years,
wow,
right?
Yeah.
So there are children today that we know that came through a safe haven, and mothers with children that came through a safe haven, that the children are thriving, they're graduating from college, they're living, the dream of, now, climbing the corporate ladder, and have vague memories, of their parents ever having been in those types of situations. But even if they are old enough to remember, they are very, very proud of the fact that their parents overcame those issues and were there for them. So it's just a beautiful thing, that never gets old, to see or to talk about, because it's something that we know is possible and within reach for lots of people that don't have the opportunity to come here.
Wow. Yeah. So with everything that you do, you definitely are one of the top nonprofits in the nation. And basically my last question, do you have plans to branch into other states? Because everything that we're talking about is not just like a Cook County, Chicago, Illinois issue. This is a nationwide issue. And we really need organizations like you to, really take over and move everywhere. So do you have plans to branch off into other states?
Well, Marcus, since we started, we knew that the system was broken and it was really fragmented and very disjointed. And what was missing was the idea of standardization, right? The idea of integrating healthcare with behavioral healthcare, community-based programming like what we do. The idea of integrating the criminal justice system with, prevention, diversion, and reentry programs. And we're finally getting to that point where we're finally seeing a convergence. So it was not going to happen, the standardization of the delivery system, without the funding and without the resources. But today, again, with the declaration of the national opiate epidemic and the criminal justice reform, today the world is scouring the universe and looking for the best practices, and we're showing up on a lot of radar screens. So a lot of cities have sent out delegations to come and see what we're doing.
Really?
We're very interested in expanding into other markets. We already have a pretty good footprint, believe it or not, here in Chicago. We have about 40 real estate developments. And what's unique about A Safe Haven is we have a continuum of housing. So we have transitional, which is where we are today, where we house about 400 people. And in fact, about 150 people that are here today are under house arrest, wearing electronic monitors, getting their life back on track.
100 people?
At least, yeah.
Oh, wow.
150 people probably in the building right now that are wearing electronic monitors that are waiting for their court dates, to happen. This is a program that really should be viewed as a national model that we have with the Cook County system, especially since bail reform is a big issue. We should note that for some people, the idea of getting referred, to a place like ours, in the interim, while they're waiting for their court dates, does tend to save their lives and saves and solves the root causes as to why they're in the court system in the first place. Many of them are due to drug and alcohol issues. So we have the opportunity right now to really define what that delivery system needs to be, not just like you said here in Chicago, but across the country. And A Safe Haven has a foundation now that's proven, right? That's scalable and was intended to scale and expand into other markets since the day we started. So we are in the process right now. One group that we haven't mentioned yet that's very important to us as well is the idea of military veterans and how often they fall through the cracks and end up homeless and end up representing a huge percentage, believe it or not, of the people that are in the criminal justice system, which is unfair. So we are expanding into Hobart, Indiana right now, and we're looking right now at building about a 75-unit facility, and that's going to be our first foray into that market in a very long time. That is going to allow us to, again, begin to expand and, standardize. It's so important that we take this moment, we can't miss it, to make sure that we're standardizing the delivery system from healthcare to behavioral healthcare in a way that's going to solve these problems, not just here, but across the country, and that's our goal.
Gotcha. Well, you heard it first from Neli Rowland Vazquez. She runs one of the #1 nonprofits in the nation. It was a pleasure to sit down with you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Okay, thank you.